Ancient sites do harness energy. We're going to see a variety of sites that do this. The first one we're going to talk about is menhirs, or standing stones. Now, I want you to just primarily look at them. There's not a whole lot to say except how beautiful they are. A person is only about this tall, so this gives you a sense of how huge some of these are. These stones are able to harness energy coming up out of the earth and ripple it out into the surrounding countryside in expanding circles. And that energy, as we're going to see, actually has positive benefits for people's health, has positive benefits for vitality. There's many, many things that these stones will do for you. And they harness an energy of consciousness, an energy that will actually help us to become more evolved, more intelligent, and more psychic. And it's just a phenomenal feat that they would actually be able to take these giant stones and get them to stand up like this in the first place. With the equipment that was supposedly available to them at the time, this is quite a stunning accomplishment. Dolmens are the next thing we're going to look at, and dolmens are actual cellars where you have stones built into a room. The purpose of these, and they are all over the place, they're in France, they're in Scotland, they're in Ireland, they're in England, is that you go inside and you meditate. And what it does is it captures energy from the earth and it concentrates it and focalizes it inside under this area here. And so you're sitting in there meditating and you get this big energy blast. And so look at that. Now how in the world, I mean the weight of this stone is so tremendous and it has stayed there for all these thousands of years. It never fell over. Regardless of earthquakes or whatever happened, it's still there. And you can see another dolmen right over here. I mean, that's a side view of it, and here it is from the front. It's astonishing that they don't fall over, but yet they don't. Some of them are a lot more organized, where they actually have breathing holes, and then it's all kind of built in on itself. So this is a big cosmic energy chamber. You really get a big blast going in underneath one of these and meditating. The next one we're going to talk about is barrows. Barrows are mounds, and they exist in America as well as in England. The ones that I'm showing you now are all going to be in England. It doesn't look like much except just a big round dome. But the interesting part is, and you can see how pyramidal that one is, the interesting thing is that many of them have entrances, and you can actually go through the entrance and go inside, and there's a big round room inside. And you meditate inside the room, and once again you get this big spiritual energy blast when you go in there. Now they're not only single mounds, sometimes they become elongated mounds, and this is all related to tailoring the energy coming out of the earth. Henges are the ones that everybody is so familiar with and we love so dearly because of Stonehenge, but that's not the only one. This is a part of Avebury here, which is another henge. The sheep really like the energy the stones give off. Sometimes you get large stones that are just set up right but are not specifically tall and narrow like that. This is an example of a barrow and a henge. You have a henge in the front, and this is a barrow in the back with an entrance up here. Another example of a henge, another example. So you can see these don't just occur a couple times. They keep happening over and over again. These are only the ones that are still standing. There's many others that have been buried. Now this is fascinating because this is the full outline of Avebury. Every single little dot in this entire serpent shape that you see here used to be a standing stone, and every single one of them still exists. They've dug them up from the ground. So this was an enormous serpent with a head and then the stomach that has eaten something. And this is Silbury Hill. So what you actually have here, if you notice the triangular relationship between these areas, is all these stones and the mound are all built to focus energy here and here primarily. It sends the energy into this area where a large gathering of people happen, and it acts as a consciousness-enhancing technology, which we now have lost access to in the West. And this, of course, is Stonehenge, the most famous group of these standing stones of all. Quite beautiful, tongue and groove lintels that stand on top of the menhirs. This is what it looked like when it was first built, and you can see that every single one of those stones was there, and they've just fallen apart over time. And then over time, these post holes were dug that allowed them to calculate eclipses and planetary cycles and all sorts of things. Now the next question is, are these ancient structures connected? And the science that will help us to understand this is ley lines. Sir Alfred Watkins was the modern pioneer to discover how ancient sites all come together on uniform blueprints. In 1920s, he found that ancient holy sites could line up in straight lines. He called them lays. The sites from extremely different ages, millennia apart, were all aligned together, including Neolithic, Bronze Age, Iron Age, and the Christian era. So here he is with his camera, and he would actually take pictures of long distances and calculate how straight the lines were, and they were amazingly accurate. Now look at this. What you see in this diagram is a part of England, and every single one of these little, where you see a word, that's an ancient sacred site. It could be anything from cathedrals to Stonehenge to all sorts of stuff built in all these different eras of time, but somehow every single one of them lands directly on that line. Now, why do you think they would do that? Doesn't it seem to suggest that they knew something? That there was some energy coming out of the earth that means that if you build a pyramid or one of these standing stones, that it's going to be a lot more powerful if you build it on that line than somewhere else. It's basically like this. If you want to eat food for dinner, you're not going to eat air, right? You're going to actually have a real meal. This is where the food is for the pyramid. So if you want your object to work, if you want your structure to work, you build it where the energy is, so it can harness the energy that you built it to make for you. The BBC published a very interesting article that gives us insights into the science of ley lines. The area again is Gloucestershire, and here's the line that we just saw before, and then you can also see there's another line there, which also has many, many ancient sites on it. Ley lines are one of the most enduring Earth mysteries, a network of prehistoric pathways crisscrossing the country believed to have mystical significance. They're alignments and patterns of powerful Earth energy, said to connect various sacred sites, including churches, temples, stone circles, megaliths, holy wells, burial sites, and other locations of spiritual or magical importance. Major prehistoric structures of higher importance can frequently be found to occupy locations where two or more lays intersect with each other. Alleged ley lines are often identified by spiritualists dowsing with rods. These methods are questionable in their accuracy, so the alleged placement of ley lines should be treated with some skepticism. Well, thankfully, that might have been true if all you had was dowsing, but what we actually have is a worldwide map of all the ley lines and why they're there, because it's all based on geometry. We're going to get to that right now. Hyperdimensional grid effects. The first place that we go to understand how all these ley lines connect together around the world is we got to find where all the weirdest stuff happens on the planet. Ivan Sanderson did that by investigating a massive number of disappearances of ships, which is marine, and aircraft. These ships are marine vessels that are sailing through the ocean, and all of a sudden they're gone. And there could be somebody sailing behind them and they seem to vanish. They don't know where they went. There's no flotsam, there's no wreckage, there's nothing to show that these ships were there. They just disappear. Now sometimes wreckage has been found and the phenomenon has been attempted to be debunked by people finding certain examples of wreckage, but that does not mean that all of this stuff is disproven by any stretch. Sanderson discovered that all of these different disappearances of aircraft and boats all occur at 12 locations around the world. They can all cluster around those 12 locations. And even more interestingly, the 12 locations are equally distant from each other. I mean, if you're just zoning out and kind of getting hypnotized by me and not really paying attention, you're not going to get the importance of that. Not that I'm hypnotic at all. But equally distant from each other, what does that mean? That's like a guitar string. When you pluck a guitar string, all of the points in which the string is vibrating like this, in between two points, it doesn't really move, and that's called a node. The nodes are always equally distant. That's a product of vibration. So if you have a string vibrating and it creates 5 nodes, those nodes stay the same, and the string is going up and down around the node like this. So what we're seeing is that the Earth's energy has these 12 spots where it's pulsating in and out like this, but on those 12 spots it's not moving. And what you're seeing is a gateway between dimensions that forms at those spots, which are geometric in nature. If you connect the dots, it forms a geometry called an icosahedron, which is one of the basic so-called Platonic solids because it was invented by Plato, who also gives us the dubious distinction of inventing school. So if you want to blame somebody for why you had to go through all those years of school, you can blame Plato. One of the 12 spots is the Bermuda Triangle, as you see here. Here they are laid out along the Earth. You can see this is the Devil's Triangle here in Japan. This is Easter Island down here. You have another one off Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. You have another one down here around Africa. That's the groovy stuff that's happened with the Himalayas. All the stories of the masters of the Far East, the masters and teachings of the Far East, Baron Spalding. He's got all that stuff about ascended masters. You have weird stuff that's happening with sightings in Africa, dinosaur sightings here. This is another disappearance spot. Most of the rest of them, as you can see, are in the ocean. The only two that are on land are in Africa and here in the Himalayas. You had a question? Now, if you actually look at the whole Earth together, you get the icosahedron. That's the shape. That's how they all connect together. So this is a geometry. Now, the reason why this is important is that this geometry will form naturally if you vibrate liquid with a pure sound frequency. That's the big secret. A pure sound frequency, like one of the white keys on the piano, you play that frequency into the water, whatever the water is. In this case, it's the energy that behaves like water. It's the same principle. But you can do it with regular water, and you get that geometry showing up in the water when you play these sound frequencies. So that's the basis of it. It's basically just geometry. It's a vibration. Geometry is vibration as a crystal. So these three Russian scientists, and everybody laughs when I say their names for whatever reason, Goncharov, Morozov, and Makarov. I don't know why that's funny, but okay, if y'all want to laugh, you can laugh. Found that over 4,000 sites fit on the global grid. And the global grid that they found, they started with Ivan Sanderson's basic 12 points, the icosahedron, and then they simply added in another geometry called a dodecahedron. And by mixing the two together, they found all the ley lines. They found a way in which everything that has ever been built that looks like it's built to harness this energy, including Chinese temples, pagodas, Stonehenge, dolmens, menhirs, all the stuff I was showing you, cathedrals, all around the world, Easter Island, the mound builders in America, you name it, they found 4,000 of these kinds of sites, and every single one of them was on this grid. So the whole world knew how to use this technology back then. It's been lost. This is the most advanced version of the grid that we now have, called Becker-Hagen's, and this is where the black spots are the original 12 nodes of Ivan Sanderson's grid. And then you see how it's evolved with, you now have two icosahedrons together, one that is out of phase with the other, and that's what creates these 120 different triangles that form the grid. It's called the Unified Vector Geometry 120 Polyhedron, or UVG 120. That's the long name for it, but the simple name is Becker-Hagen's grid.